Yes, good morning to you, Joanne. Following that press conference hosted by DA leader Helen Zille, we have her now in an interview. Good morning to you, Premier Zille. Thank you so much for chatting to us. You described this as a disappointment, but a risk that you took and didn't work out, this union between the Democratic Alliance and Agang.
Yes, it was a risk, and in politics one has to be prepared to take calculated risks. We worked very hard to get this together over a very long period of time. It didn't happen in a week, I can assure you. Since 2010 I have been talking to Dr. Ramphele about this. We took a calculated risk in the DA, and sometimes risks work and sometimes they don't. Then you cut your losses and move on.
How exactly are you going to move on from here, though? There is a certain aspect of undecided voters maybe not trusting the DA as much as they did before, seeing as though this has happened now.
Well, we are going on with our election campaign, and it should be absolutely clear to the voters now. They've got two choices, the ANC or the DA. And everything that we put on the table in terms of policy, in terms of diversity, in terms of vision, in terms of track record is much better as far as the DA is concerned compared to the ANC.
In a nutshell, can you tell us exactly why this happened? Mr. Ramphele has been quoted this morning as saying that it was a rushed move. Do you put it down just to the whole process being rushed and not working out? Or is there one particular reason that you can point to? Was it indecision on Mamphele Ramphele's part?
It certainly wasn't rushed. As I said, I've been talking to her from 2010. She's been ready at times and then she's backed off. She's been ready at times and then she's backed off. I think that's happened 3 or 4 times. Last year in October, November, she came to me and she said she's now ready and she really wants to take it forward. We then got the discussions going again, and I took her to the FedEx, and you know what happened after that. The federal executive agreed by a 2/3 majority that we could in principle have her as our presidential candidate, subject to a concrete agreement from her. And then on the Monday I saw her. Things were already starting to appear in the newspapers, so I think she felt a bit under pressure, and it was her at her insistence that we announced the next day. It didn't suit me at all because I had very important appointments to keep, but I agreed because she was very keen to get clarity and to stop the leaks going out.
Where does the presidential candidacy within the DA stand at the moment? Is that still undecided? Are you going to stand?
We'll go back to the federal executive. I certainly aren't in a position to make a decision who the DA's presidential candidate is. That's what the FedEx has to decide, and that's what the FedEx did decide by a 2/3 majority, and they will discuss it again.
Where does it leave the DA going forward with other mergers and coalitions? Are you still open to the possibility of working with other political parties, merging with them, them being incorporated into the DA, or have your fingers been burnt through this alliance between yourself and Agang?
You know, if you grow in politics, we've grown through getting new voters, many new voters. We've grown through mergers and acquisitions and coalitions. That's how you grow. Now, there's a very fundamental difference between mergers and coalitions. Coalitions you do after the election, if together one can get above 50% and govern. That's what a coalition is. A merger is when two parties come together, like the Independent Democrats and the DA, to form a whole that is often greater than the sum of the parts. And the voters want a strong, united alternative. That's what the voters want. All our polling tells us that, and every individual I ever meet tells us that. So that's what we're trying to do in the DA, and we've been very successful. 20 years ago, we used to be a 1.7% party. The last election, and a local government election in which the DA always does better than national elections, we were a 24% party. So that was really good growth, and it was by getting new voters, by mergers, by coalitions, by acquisitions. The DA pioneered coalition in democratic South Africa. We set up a very complex coalition in Cape Town in 2006. It worked amazingly well, and many of those parties then merged with the DA, and so did the ID.
Early on this morning, you paraphrased a very oft-said phrase. You said, stuff happens. Obviously, you draw your own conclusions as to exactly what that means. But is this your message going forward? This has happened now. You can't look back going forward. Full steam ahead for elections.
We took this step in good faith in the interests of South Africa. We're in a race against time to save our constitution and save our democracy. And we've all got to understand that. We haven't got all the time in the world. So that's going to take risks. Some risks work and work very well, like our merger with the ID. Some risks don't work. This one didn't. When a risk doesn't work, you cut your losses and you move on. And that's what we will do here.
And last but not least, there seems to be a slight bit of confusion as to the DA's planned march on Luthuli House. You said you will only be planning that march once the court order has been given that you are allowed to legally do so. You said so at the press conference this morning, confirming that the DA has been granted permission by the magistrate. Are you going ahead tomorrow, or is it a later date?
We're going to reapply for permission. The magistrate said we had a right to march. Obviously, with uncertainty hanging over the court case, we couldn't plan all the necessary infrastructure and logistics of a march because they are quite extensive. So the magistrate upheld our argument that we were allowed to march. We will be reapplying, and then we will be marching.
Just as a slight aside on that, are you not worried this will all end in bloodshed on the streets of Johannesburg as your march on COSATU House did?
We have a constitutional right to march and present petitions. We have a right to do that peacefully, and we've always done it peacefully. If one side, that is COSATU in the past instance or in the current instance, the ANC Youth League or the South African Communist Party, and COSATU again, that has been issuing the most vile threats against us, if they're not prepared to uphold the Constitution and the law, it doesn't mean that we have to abrogate our constitutional rights. The police then must do their job and protect our rights, and we certainly will be taking very intensive steps to ensure that our members and our supporters, when they march, are not harmed in any way. We're going to take unique precautions ever taken in any march in South Africa before, because we take the threat seriously. COSATU has acted on them, and its supporters have acted on them in the past, and we certainly don't want mayhem and bloodshed, but we're not prepared to give away our Constitution clause by clause on the basis of threats by people acting unconstitutionally.
Thank you very much. That is Premier Helen Zille, leader of the Democratic Alliance, making an announcement this morning explaining their side of the story. We have, of course, waited with bated breath that march to Luthuli House, as I'm sure other keen observers of South African politics as well.
Know more about your world.
AgangSA.com